The rain fell steadily on the day of Grandpa William's funeral. I stood under a black umbrella, watching as distant relatives and family friends paid their respects. My sister, Victoria, and brother, Marcus, hovered near our parents, accepting condolences with practiced grace, their designer outfits perfectly coordinated for the somber occasion. I hung back, feeling out of place in my thrift store suit. The weight of Grandpa's old watch felt heavy in my pocket. His final gift to me. Of all the things Victoria had sneered when the will was read, Oliver gets that worthless watch. Perfect. It suits him, outdated and broken, just like his life choices. Marcus had laughed, adjusting his Rolex. At least we got everything that matters. The house, the investments, the art collection. I touched the watch through my pocket, remembering my last conversation with Grandpa William 3 weeks earlier. He'd been sitting in his study, surrounded by his beloved antique clocks and timepieces. "Oliver," he'd said, his voice weak, but his eyes sharp as ever. "Come here." He'd taken off his old watch, the one he'd worn every day for as long as I could remember. "This is for you." "Grandpa, I can't." "You can, and you will." He pressed it into my hand. "Promise me you'll keep it safe. Promise me you'll look after it." "I promise," I'd said, confused but touched. Now, standing in the rain, those words echoed in my mind. Victoria approached, her umbrella tilted just so, her heels sinking slightly into the wet grass. "Mom and Dad are having everyone back to the house," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Though I doubt you'll feel comfortable there anymore, now that it's ours." I said nothing, just nodded. She was right. The grand old Victorian that had been our grandfather's pride and joy now belonged to my siblings, along with nearly everything else. "You should be grateful," she continued. "At least you got something, even if it is just that old watch. Though why he gave it to you." She shook her head, probably senile at the end. I watched her walk away, her words stinging more than I wanted to admit. At 32, I was the family disappointment. While Victoria had become a successful corporate lawyer and Marcus ran his own tech startup, I'd chosen to become a high school history teacher, a waste of potential, according to our parents. Back in my small apartment that evening, I took out the watch. It was beautiful in an understated way, gold-toned, with a leather strap worn smooth with age. The face was elegant, with Roman numerals and delicate hands that had stopped moving years ago. I'd always loved watching Grandpa wind it each morning, though in recent years he'd admitted it didn't keep time well anymore. Some things, he'd say with a twinkle in his eye, are worth more than their function. On impulse, I Googled the brand name, Patek Philippe. My eyes widened as results populated the screen. Similar vintage models were selling for impressive sums. But surely this one, broken and worn, wasn't worth much. Still, something made me reach out to an auction house the next day. I sent photos, expecting nothing. 2 days later, my phone rang. "Mr. Oliver Bennett?" A crisp voice asked. "This is James Montgomery from Christie's. We received your inquiry about the Patek Philippe timepiece." "Yes, though I'm sure it's not." "Mr. Bennett," he interrupted, "could you verify the serial number on the back?" I turned the watch over, reading out the tiny engraved numbers. Silence. Then, "Mr. Bennett, what you have there is a 1940s Patek Philippe reference 1518 perpetual calendar chronograph. Only 281 were ever made. If authentic, and from the photos, it appears to be, its value would be approximately $4.2 million. I nearly dropped the phone. That's impossible. Not at all. In fact, given its provenance and condition, it could go for more at auction. We'd very much like to have our experts examine it. I sat down hard, my legs suddenly weak. I'll need to think about it. After hanging up, I stared at the watch in disbelief. $4.2 million. The number seemed absurd, impossible. Yet something in the auction house representative's voice had been deadly serious. My phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Mom says you didn't RSVP to her charity gala. $500 a plate. Though I suppose that's a bit out of your teacher's salary range. Don't worry, we understand. My fingers hovered over the keys. How easy it would be to tell her about the watch's value, to throw it in her face after all her snide comments. Instead, I simply replied, "Can't make it. Busy that night." The next morning, I took the watch to a local expert recommended by Christie's. Mr. Sullivan was elderly, with thick glasses and careful hands that reminded me of my grandfather. "Extraordinary piece," he breathed, examining it under his loupe. "One of the finest examples I've seen. Your grandfather had excellent taste." "Can you fix it?" I asked. "Make it run again?" He looked up, surprised. "You want to restore it rather than sell it?" It was his. He loved it. It should work. He nodded slowly. "It'll take time. These movements are incredibly complex. But yes, I can repair it." As he continued his examination, he suddenly frowned. "Interesting. What is it?" "There appears to be." Wait. His fingers pressed something, and with a soft click, a hidden compartment in the case back sprang open. My heart stopped. Inside was a folded piece of paper and a small key. "I've never seen this modification before," Mr. Sullivan said. "Completely custom work. Extraordinary craftsmanship." With trembling fingers, I unfolded the paper. I recognized my grandfather's elegant handwriting immediately. "My dear Oliver, if you're reading this, you've discovered the watch's first secret. The key opens the floor safe in my study, the one behind the Persian rug. Your siblings think they've won everything, but they don't know what really matters. Don't let them know until the time is right. All my love, Grandpa." I stared at the note, then at the key. The study, now Victoria's home office. The Persian rug she declared outdated and planned to replace. Mr. Sullivan cleared his throat. "Shall I proceed with the repairs?" I nodded, carefully folding the note and pocketing the key. "Yes, but please keep the watch's value between us for now." He smiled knowingly. "Of course. These old timepieces often hold more secrets than we expect." Walking home, my mind raced. What was in the safe? Why had Grandpa kept it secret? And how was I going to get into his study now that the house belonged to my siblings? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Victoria. "Having an appraisal done of Grandpa's art collection tomorrow. Apparently, some pieces might be worth more than we thought. Not that you'd be interested in such things, with your modest lifestyle." I smiled faintly. My sister, always so focused on obvious wealth, had missed the most valuable thing in the house, just as Grandpa must have known she would. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the watch, the key, the safe. What was Grandpa trying to tell me? What had he hidden away? The next morning, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Marcus stood there, looking uncomfortable. "Hey," he said, shifting from foot to foot. "Listen, Victoria's been thinking. Maybe we were a bit harsh about the watch. If you want to sell it, we might be interested in buying it. You know, keeping it in the family. We could offer you, say, $5,000. I nearly laughed. They must have done some preliminary research, discovered the brand's value, but clearly hadn't identified the specific model. That's generous, I said carefully, but I think I'll keep it. Sentimental value, you know. His face darkened slightly. Don't be difficult, Oliver. You can't afford to maintain a vintage piece like that. It should be with someone who can take proper care of it. Like you? Exactly. Don't you think Grandpa would want that? I thought of the hidden note, the secret key. Actually, I think Grandpa knew exactly what he was doing. Marcus left angry, and I knew the siblings' meeting tonight would be interesting. They'd always underestimated me, dismissed me, just like they dismissed Grandpa's old watch. But sometimes I thought, touching the key in my pocket, the most valuable things are hidden in plain sight. And soon, very soon, I would discover exactly what Grandpa had been protecting all these years. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Victoria called the next evening, her voice suspiciously sweet. "Ollie, darling, we're having a small family dinner tomorrow night. The art appraiser found some fascinating pieces, and we'd love your perspective." I could hear the condescension in her tone. She'd never valued my perspective before, especially regarding art. This was about the watch. "Sure," I said, matching her false warmth. "What time?" 7. "Oh, and Oliver? To wear something appropriate. The appraiser is quite prestigious." I arrived at exactly 7, wearing my best blazer, not designer, but well-tailored. The house looked different already. Victoria had replaced the warm antique lamps with modern LED fixtures. The familiar scent of Grandpa's leather-bound books had been overwhelmed by expensive candles. Marcus met me at the door, champagne in hand. "Brother, you're looking teacherly." The appraiser, a sophisticated woman named Ms. Blackwood, was already there, discussing something with Victoria in hushed tones. They stopped talking when I entered. "Ah, the youngest Bennett," Victoria said, gesturing grandly. "The one who inherited Grandpa's watch." Ms. Blackwood's eyes sharpened with interest. "The Patek Philippe? I'd love to see it." "Oh, it's broken," Victoria cut in quickly. "Nothing special, just an old family piece." I smiled. "Actually, I'm having it restored." "Really?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "That must be expensive on your salary." I found a reasonable watchmaker. I turned to Ms. Blackwood. He seemed quite interested in the reference 1518 perpetual calendar chronograph mechanism. The room went silent. Victoria's champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Ms. Blackwood's eyes widened. "A 1518? Are you certain?" "Quite certain," I replied calmly, "though I'm more interested in its sentimental value." Victoria set her glass down with a sharp clink. "Dinner's ready." Throughout the meal, I could feel their eyes on me. Victoria kept trying to steer the conversation toward the watch, while Marcus made pointed comments about family obligations and sharing wealth. I focused on my food and asked Ms. Blackwood about the art collection. Each time she mentioned a valuable piece, Victoria or Marcus would quickly interject with their plans for it. "The Monet will look perfect in my downtown office," Victoria declared. "And the Rodin sculpture," Marcus added, "will make an excellent centerpiece for my new gallery." I waited for my moment. As coffee was served, Victoria finally pounced. "Oliver, about the watch." "We've been thinking." It's really a family heirloom. It should stay with the house, don't you think? We could offer you a very generous sum." "How generous?" I asked, sipping my coffee. 50,000, Marcus said quickly. "That's quite a windfall for you." I set my cup down carefully. "That's very kind, but I promised Grandpa I'd look after it." "Don't be ridiculous," Victoria snapped, her facade cracking. "You can't afford to maintain it properly. We know it's valuable." "Do you?" I asked quietly. "Of course. It could be worth hundreds of thousands." 4.2 million, I interrupted. "At minimum, according to Christie's." The silence was deafening. Victoria's face went pale, then red. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "You're lying," Victoria finally managed. "Am I? Shall we call them together? I have their number." Marcus leaned forward, his voice urgent. "Oliver, be reasonable. You can't handle that kind of asset. We have experience with valuable pieces. Like the ones you're selling." I gestured to the empty walls where Grandpa's favorite paintings had hung. Everything he loved, being parceled out for profit? "That's different," Victoria protested. "We're preserving his legacy. By erasing it?" I stood up. "I think I'll preserve his legacy my way, thanks." As I turned to leave, Victoria called out, "Wait, we should discuss this as a family. Perhaps we could share custody of the watch." I paused at the door. "You know what Grandpa always said about time." They stared at me blankly. "It reveals everything eventually." I smiled. "Good night." I heard them arguing before I reached my car. By morning, the calls started, first from our parents, then from family friends. Everyone had an opinion about what I should do with the family's watch. But I had other concerns. The key burned in my pocket, and I knew I needed to access that safe soon. Victoria was already talking about renovating the study. My chance came 3 days later. Victoria called, her voice honey-sweet again. "Ollie, I've been thinking. You're right. The watch is yours. Grandpa wanted you to have it. But would you at least let us document it for the family history? We're having a photographer come tomorrow to capture all of Grandpa's important pieces before they're sold." I heard the trap in her words, but also the opportunity. "What time?" "Noon. Bring the watch, and we can all have lunch afterward." Like old times. I agreed, but had no intention of bringing the watch. Instead, I arrived early, knowing Victoria's predictable schedule: yoga at 11, followed by a lengthy organic lunch with her social circle. The housekeeper, Mrs. Garcia, who'd known me since childhood, let me in with a warm smile. "They said you'd be coming, Mr. Oliver. Would you like some tea while you wait?" Actually, I left some teaching materials in Grandpa's study last time I was here. "Mind if I grab them?" She waved me up, and I entered the study, closing the door behind me. The room still smelled of leather and pipe tobacco, though Victoria had already replaced Grandpa's comfortable chairs with modern furniture. The Persian rug was still there, its rich colors dulled with age. I rolled it back carefully, revealing the hardwood floor beneath. There, nearly invisible unless you knew what to look for, was the outline of the safe. The key fit perfectly. Inside, I found a single leather portfolio and another envelope with my name. I opened the envelope first. "Dear Oliver, if you're reading this, you've proven me right once again. Your siblings see only surface value, the watch's worth, the house's prestige. But you, my boy, you see deeper. The portfolio contains the truth about our family's real wealth. The art, the house, These are trinkets compared to what's in these documents. But more importantly, they contain the proof of what your father and siblings have been hiding. Use this wisdom well. Love, Grandpa. My hands trembled as I opened the portfolio. Inside were stock certificates, offshore account details, and most surprisingly, documentation of a massive trust in my name. One that my father had been legally obligated to disclose years ago but never had. I heard voices downstairs. Victoria was back early. Quickly, I photographed every document with my phone, replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, and rolled the rug back into place. I was examining a bookshelf when Victoria burst in. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. I held up a worn copy of The Great Gatsby, Grandpa's favorite. "Just collecting some memories before everything changes." She relaxed slightly. "The watch, still being restored. Maybe next time." As I drove home, my mind raced with the implications of what I'd found. The trust alone was worth more than the house and art collection combined. And the evidence of my family's deception. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of my grandfather, younger, standing in front of a magnificent clock collection. The message read, "Mr. Bennett, you don't know me, but I was your grandfather's horologist for 30 years. He left instructions for me to contact you once the watch was found. We need to talk." I stared at the message, then at the setting sun. "Time reveals everything eventually," Grandpa had said, and it seemed time was finally on my side. The horologist's shop was tucked away in a quiet corner of the city's old district. The bell chimed softly as I entered, and the scent of oil and aged wood brought memories of Grandpa's study flooding back. "Mr. Bennett." An elderly man emerged from the back room. "I'm Harold Winters. Your grandfather spoke of you often." He led me to a workbench where, to my surprise, dozens of watches were laid out in chronological order. All Patek Philippe's, all belonging to my grandfather. William wasn't just a collector, Harold explained, carefully lifting each piece. He was a guardian. These timepieces, they tell a story far more valuable than their price tags. He pointed to the first watch. 1940, purchased by your great-grandfather. Inside was the deed to the family's first oil well. The next, 1955, containing microfilm of business contracts. And another, 1962, with bearer bonds hidden in the case. I stared at the collection, realization dawning. They're all safes. Harold nodded. Your grandfather created a legacy in plain sight. While everyone saw expensive watches, he built an underground empire. Each piece contains documents, codes, keys to accounts. But the one he gave you, that's the master key. He reached for my grandfather's watch, which he'd been restoring. May I? I handed it over, and he opened the secret compartment again, this time pressing a hidden catch I hadn't noticed. A second, smaller space was revealed. Your father and siblings, Harold said quietly. Never understood William's true genius. They saw wealth as something to display. William knew better. He watched them grow greedy, watched them begin embezzling from the family companies years ago. The documents I found in the safe are only part of the picture. This, he held up a tiny memory card from the watch's second compartment. This is the key to everything. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, every illegal transaction they've made over the past decade. My hands shook as I took the card. Why didn't he expose them himself? William believed in justice, but he also believed in redemption. He wanted to give them a chance to change on their own. When they didn't, Harold shrugged. He chose you as his successor for a reason. I thought of Victoria and Marcus, selling off Grandpa's beloved art collection, destroying his legacy piece by piece. What am I supposed to do with this? That's up to you. But first, Harold smiled, there's something else you should see. He led me to a massive safe in the back room. William left this in my care 20 years ago. Inside is the real family fortune. Not the houses or art your siblings are fighting over, but the investments and companies he built secretly. All documented, all legal, and all. He paused. In your name. The safe door swung open to reveal stacks of documents, stock certificates, and a letter addressed to me. But what caught my eye was a photograph on top. Grandpa and me at my college graduation, the only family member who attended when I chose teaching over business. He was proud of you, Harold said softly. Said you were the only one who understood that wealth wasn't about possessions. I picked up the letter with trembling hands. My dearest Oliver, by now, Harold will have shown you the truth. Your father and siblings' crimes, the real family fortune, all of it. What you do with this information is your choice. But remember what I taught you about time. It's not about the hours we count, but what we make of them. Choose wisely. Love, Grandpa. I looked at Harold. The watch is worth far more than $4.2 million when you consider what it protects. The question is, are you ready to protect it too? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. Oliver, we need to talk. We know about the safe in the study. Come to the house tonight, or we go public with some interesting information about your teaching career. I showed Harold the message. He shook his head. They're bluffing. William made sure your record was spotless. He knew they'd try something like this. I thought for a moment, then typed a reply. You're right. We should talk. I'll bring the watch and everything else I found. Harold raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? I picked up the restored watch. Now ticking perfectly, its hidden compartments secure. Grandpa gave them chances to change. Maybe it's time for one last opportunity. And if they don't take it? I smiled, touching the memory card that contained evidence of all their crimes. Then they'll learn what Grandpa always said. Time reveals everything, Harold finished. As I left the shop, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the city. In my pocket, the watch ticked steadily, carrying secrets that could destroy my family or save it. Tonight would determine which. The family mansion loomed before me in the evening light, every window illuminated as if for a grand occasion. I checked my watch, Grandpa's watch, one last time before ringing the doorbell. 8:00 p.m. exactly. Victoria opened the door herself, her practiced smile brittle. Finally, everyone's waiting. Everyone meant not just Marcus and Victoria, but our parents too. They sat in the formal living room, father behind Grandpa's antique desk, a power play that didn't go unnoticed. Son, he said, his voice carrying that familiar note of disappointment. Let's handle this like business people. I sat in Grandpa's old leather chair, the only piece of furniture they hadn't replaced yet. Business people. Interesting choice of words. We know you accessed the safe, Marcus cut in. That was private family property. Like the millions you embezzled from the family foundations. I asked quietly. The room went still. Mother's hand trembled as she set down her wine glass. Careful, Oliver, father warned. Accusations like that. I pulled out my tablet, displaying the documents from the memory card. Aren't accusations when you have proof. Bank transfers. offshore accounts, even those creative accounting tricks you use to hide the money from the Cancer Research Foundation. Grandpa started. Victoria's face went white. That's impossible. We destroyed all the records. Not all of them, I said, touching the watch in my pocket. Grandpa was always good at keeping time and keeping records. What do you want? Marcus demanded. Money? Name your price. I looked around the room at the empty spaces where Grandpa's beloved art had hung, at the modern furniture that had replaced his carefully curated antiques. I want you to understand what you've lost. I placed the watch on the desk. This isn't worth $4.2 million because it's rare. It's worth that much because it's perfect. Every gear, every component working in harmony. Like Grandpa's business empire was supposed to work. Before you started stripping it for parts, I continued. Before you decided personal profit meant more than purpose. You were just a teacher, Victoria spat. What do you know about business? I smiled. I know Grandpa made me the sole heir to his real fortune 2 decades ago. The companies you've been stealing from, they're mine, have been since I turned 25. The silence was deafening. Father's face turned ashen. You have 2 choices, I said, sliding a folder across the desk. Sign these papers returning every penny you stole, resign from all company positions, and walk away with your freedom. Or don't, and I'll let the SEC explain the consequences. You destroy your own family? Mother whispered. No, I replied. You did that yourselves. I'm offering a chance to save what's left. Victoria reached for the papers with trembling hands. He knew. All this time, Grandpa knew what we were doing. He hoped you'd change on your own. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. As I reached the door, Father called out, Oliver, the watch? Was it all just a test? I turned back. No, Father. It was a lesson about looking past surface value, about understanding that real worth isn't about price tags. I left them there, surrounded by their modern furniture and empty walls, the weight of their decisions hanging heavy in the air. The next morning, the signed papers were delivered to my apartment. Along with them came a note from Victoria. You were his favorite because you saw what really mattered. I understand that now. I placed the papers in my briefcase, ready to deliver them to the company lawyers. On my wrist, Grandpa's watch kept perfect time, its quiet ticking a reminder of all he taught me. Some might say I was naive to give them a chance to walk away. But as I headed to my first board meeting as CEO of the family empire, I remembered Grandpa's words about time revealing everything. Sometimes it reveals greed and deception. Sometimes it reveals truth and justice. And sometimes, if you're patient enough, it reveals wisdom in the most unexpected places, like an old watch that carried far more than just time.